We need to learn from in utero how miraculous our human system is. And we need to grow up respecting and learning and taking care of that miracle every single day.
Welcome to the Healing Reset. This is a health podcast aimed at providing hope in your body's ability to heal and maintain health. Contrary to modern day belief, you are amazing and you are designed to heal. I'm Jess, your host. Today we have on Dr. Connealy, a well-known author who has spent years treating people across the USA who are living with cancer. She's here to paint a realistic picture of cancer and one that is threaded with hope and prevention. Welcome to the show, Dr. Connealy. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So your book, it's called The Cancer Revolution, a groundbreaking program to reverse and prevent cancer, speaks to the hope of a cancer diagnosis, which is kind of what this podcast is all about. So what made you write a book on cancer?
Right. Well, this started actually a long time ago with the attempt to write the book, because I wrote a book and then I'm like, no, this isn't at all what it should be. So then I started the whole process all over. And I wrote the book because my whole mission since I was young, I found out at 16 that my mother took a drug called DES. And DES, diethylstilbestrol, is a very potent estrogen given to women to prevent miscarriage and stop bleeding. And so they found out that the offspring, both male and female, had predisposition to cancer, hormone problems, anatomical problems, etc. And so I started going to MD Anderson, which is a very large cancer institution in Houston, Texas, and to get evaluations and checkups and everything, which I've done all my life. And so then I went to UT School of Public Health and did my thesis on DES. And then I got the opportunity. I'm like, I want to be a doctor. I want to go to medical school. And so I went to medical school. And so I always was interested in, how do I not get cancer? How do I prevent cancer on myself? And so then I really had luckily mentors that came in my journey that kind of like, oh no, you need to know this and you need to know this, etc. And so I said, cancer started really increasing in the last, I'd say 15 years, like really increasing.
Yeah, like 1 in every 2.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to let people know there's all kinds of things that we need to do. So when I started the Cancer Center for Healing, it wasn't that, it was called Oasis of Hope from Dr. Contreras. He and I were partners. And then, so we had to separate because people didn't want to go to Mexico. They just wanted to go in the United States. And I had an oncologist on board at that time. And then the oncologist wanted to retire because he had rheumatoid arthritis. So anyway, so I just started building the Cancer Center for Healing. Like one of my real true missions is early detection and prevention, because every day I get the opportunity and privilege to see people in their most dire stage 4 cancer after doing everything. And we need to prevent that. We need to prevent these very, very serious diagnoses in patients. And medicine is very reactive. It's not proactive, preventive, personalized, precise medicine at all. It's just like, okay, treat the train wreck and, hopefully you can make some progress. And we know that usually that isn't. In an emergency, things work really good in the United States, like an emergency from a car accident or something unusual. Emergency medicine in the US, it's the best in the world. But as far as early detection and prevention, not just for cancer, but heart disease, autoimmune, any kind of disease, like let's optimize every person, and then the world would just be so much better place, right? So anyways, I've been practicing for 35 years. I luckily started out kind of natural. I had a dietitian in my office 35 years ago. And my purpose at that time was weight loss, because everybody needed to lose weight. But anyway, it's evolved. And, I tell people ask me, what do I do? Everything from human optimization to stage 4 cancer. So it really came out of like my personal journey And now, now that I see people all over, and unfortunately about half of the patients come to me in stage 4. And it's like, oh my gosh, all this could have been prevented. And I really learned about 23 years ago, what is the picture of cancer? And that has evolved, to where I am now. And I feel like our algorithm that we have created is like the best to know if someone has cancer. Because I know that though people aren't interested, I feel great, I feel fine, I'm okay, they're not interested in prevention and early detection. But I think, in the last couple of years, people have kind of come front and center with their health because of, what's gone on and how to, not get drastically ill with this virus. And so I think people now are awakening more. I really do. I think they're more open. Integrative natural medicine has been around for hundreds of years. It's nothing new. Before 1921, before the Flexner report, every doctor had a mortar and pestle and was making potions and lotions and drops and all kind of things. And so, we've lost all that. I don't want to say we've lost it all, but we've lost it. And we count on a drug to fix people. But drugs and the medical system is the third leading cause of death in this country, published by Johns Hopkins. So we really have to, when we see a patient, we've got to make sure that their system, their whole body system is working for them on all levels.
Well, I listened to a chat of yours, and you were mentioning how disease takes years to form and how methodology of health is really a daily discipline, which I found interesting. We feel so good in our teens and then our 20s and early 30s, a lot of times even past that. And it can mask these symptoms that are slowly forming and leading to what is a disease or chronic illness in our later years. And so let's speak to that prevention part. How do you as a practitioner talk to someone who's listening to this podcast in their 20s saying there are ways to create health for longevity?
Right. Well, I do believe the younger population is really starting to awaken. And because one, they're getting serious illnesses at 25 and 30. All right.
Well, and now that you say that, cancer is being diagnosed younger and younger.
Yes, exactly. And so, I have them. I see them here. I had a 25-year-old at the end of December who was diagnosed with melanoma on her temple. And it was supposedly melanoma in situ. Melanoma in situ means it was just superficial. So I said, well, let's make sure you don't have circulating tumor cells, because melanoma is a very rapidly growing. And when you're young, cancer is way more aggressive than if you're 60 plus years old.
Why is that?
Because the DNA is replicating very, very fast and very quickly in a young person as opposed to an older person.
And why do you think people are getting cancer younger? I mean, it's something that we can't cover in a half hour of a show, but
what I think it's environmental. I think environmental exposure, last year in 2021, they had American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and none of the speakers talked to each other before they talk, right? And they all independently said that environmental pollution is our number one problem. So that is the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat, the things you put on your skin, and then obviously everything that's surrounding you and bombarding you every single day, electromagnetic fields, all these things. And so I think this generation is growing up in the most abundant environment of toxicity. I think there's just more stress today because everybody is forced to work so quickly, so fast. There's so many steps to do everything. Nothing is simple anymore. You can't talk to anybody anymore. It's just constantly, like, it's just so many things that people have to deal with in a day. When I grew up and when I was 25, things were simpler. And so it was kind of kind of happy-go-lucky. I know in residency it wasn't simple, but I do believe that it was a lot calmer, simpler existence. Okay. But now everything is just so many steps, so complicated. Nothing is simple and easy. And from what I see, because I hire a lot of young people, Jess, and I feel like they have a lot of anxiety. I think they go on social media, which is a real artificial impression of what a life is. Okay. And we're not living in community. We're living disconnected, supposedly connected because we have Facebook or phone, et cetera, but we're living disconnected, connected existences. And people need to live in community and they need to work in synergy with each other. And we fractured the family. And so that causes disintegration, of society. And so I remember, who was it said, community is the guru of the future. Because if you read all the books and studies, and there's books written on loneliness and all that, and the blue zones, and everything is about community. And I was watching, I don't go on Twitter that much, and it came up on my Twitter feed that middle-aged women are, they're online and they're existing in loneliness. And I'm like, how sad is that? Okay. So I think there's many, many factors. All right. But I think the availability, our food is very tainted with lots of toxicity, glyphosate, nanoplastics. You look at the water, there's pharma water, toxic water. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so, you have to create your own living sanctuary. You really do.
Technically, prevention, we want to prevent chronic illness. I mean, that's preventing chronic illness or helping your body to start processing out these toxins or getting them out. And coming back to connection, that's just helping us as a whole. Outside of a cancer diagnosis, that's just going to help bring a lot of health in general.
Correct. Well, I had a patient yesterday I hadn't seen in a while. They live in Chicago and California. And he did financial counseling, and he decided to retire because he has stage 4 prostate cancer. And so he said, oh, my new community is all the people I met here, because we encourage community here in the clinic. And he goes, all of his new friends are all the people he met here. And I'm like, wow, how beautiful is that? And so I really encourage that. All right. That's why I just started an online cancer conversation, January 2022. So people don't feel alone. They can hear answers. We can talk about it. We can talk about all the fundamental issues that create this perfect storm earthquake from cancer. Like you said earlier, every disease, it just doesn't happen in your body. Whatever the label is, it just doesn't happen. It takes years.
Yeah. You're speaking right to my mom heart right now, not only thinking of raising a daughter in what you just described environmentally, but also to having a mom and a dad who, once I had children, you really notice this community, this village that it takes. And I just picture back even 50 years ago, that community system being even stronger, people coming and just like backing you up to raise kids in a healthy society. It's harder to find that in this fast pace. It's harder to make that happen. So I really appreciate that side of slowing down and surrounding yourself with people, not a phone that connects you to people, but with actual people. One of the questions I was thinking through that I wanted to discuss later on when we actually got into like kind of the meat of this diagnosis was the role of love and compassion and what role that plays in healing. And I think that goes right back into the community and the prevention, just having love and compassion in your everyday community.
Right. Well, I went on a hike to Grand Canyon maybe 8 years ago or so. And there was a doctor on the hike that I didn't know before. And there was a group of about 12 of us. And we went on a hike to Grand Canyon. And he said to me, he's a rehabilitation doctor. So he helps patients who've had a stroke or a fall or something like that. And he isn't an integrative functional medicine doctor, but he was very interested in things because he had a diagnosis pulmonary fibrosis, which is basically your lungs are turning into cement. So he said, so how would you summarize your practice? I said that love is the medicine for everything. Because you're right, when we talk to patients and I ask them about their life, okay, And I asked them about their stress. That's one of the components. And so we have so much guilt and fear with patients, and so much events that they have been going through, and they're going through it kind of alone. And then they are overwhelmed with their entire existence, that one, they have cancer, why do they have, and then the stress. It's either a child or a parent or a divorce or something, and they'll tell you. And every one of those patients, every patient with a diagnosis or without a diagnosis, usually needs emotional conflict resolution. Because, there's a great book called, you probably know it, called Your Body Keeps Score. And your body knows all these things. And until we turn an unfavorable experience into a favorable experiences, I tell people your disadvantages become your advantages. So, but we need people to help us do that. Okay. We can't do it all ourselves. You've got to partner with someone who can help you turn those unfavorable detours in your life around, and not hold it in and hold it, as like, oh my God, it's the worst thing. And, I'm scared to death and I'm full of guilt because I didn't or could have, should have done something, etc. And so you're absolutely right. And that love is, the most meritorious event, right? So, but we've lost that.
It reminds me, I think, through the statement that suffering is the soul's gold. And I don't wish suffering upon any of our listeners, anyone in this community that we have here. However, I think there is a space to grow from it and have this healing response that can be greater. And sometimes that doesn't look like we want it to in the physical. Sometimes that is purely more of a mental response.
Yeah, but detours in life, it's going to happen. All right. And it's learning how to turn those negative parts of your journey called life into how it can help you, and then how you can bless someone else with your suffering and with your unfavorable experience.
So one of the things I was thinking through was early detection and testing. And then I instantly went to, well, some people just don't want to know. What do you say to that audience? Because there's going to be people who see this and say, I don't want to know if I'm going to have cancer. Then I'm going to make myself have cancer. Where do you talk around that?
I tell people, like, we are a miracle. You mentioned something like that in the beginning. We are always a human miracle, and we need to learn from in utero how miraculous our human system is. And we need to grow up respecting and learning and taking care of that miracle every single day. And so I tell patients, you can't manage something you don't measure. And I know everybody in life is measuring something. It's just human being.
Even going back to the social media example of how many likes you get on a post, like there are measurements on everything. Our weight, some people get wrapped around our number.
Yeah, exactly. And your wrinkles and your whatever clothes, it's always. So the bottom line is, you need to verify that you're okay. So you have to partner with a physician. I say physician because a physician has the schooling, but you need to partner with a physician who is conventionally trained, that has learned the new updated medicine. Okay. So for example, I'll give you an example. C-reactive protein is a blood test that every doctor should be doing on every single patient. It was on the cover of Time and Newsweek about 12 years ago with a fire on the cover. And I'm like, well, wait, why isn't every doctor doing this test? And you know why they're not doing it? Because there's not a drug for high C-reactive protein. So if there's no drug, why would they test it? Because they don't even know what to do. But if they read what to do, you'd find all the answers on PubMed, what lowers C-reactive protein. But that forces them to go down a rabbit hole that they really need to know. But here we are shortchanging patients by not doing CRP, vitamin D, hemoglobin A1C, SED rate, which is another marker, very cheap marker for inflammation.
What's that last one?
SED rate, ESR. So, and these are very, very inexpensive, very routine tests that are done on any laboratory. Okay.
So for listeners out there, that's just 4 labs you listed off that they could go and get, they could request.
Right.
We can advocate for ourselves and we can request those 4 labs.
Right. Anyone, I tell people really good, super, super comprehensive cost about $250. Okay. And that's comprehensive. That's not that's chemistry panel, which looks at your electrolytes, liver, kidney, CBC, which looks at your hemoglobin, your white count, the hemoglobin A1C, CRP, DHEA sulfate, like some hormones. You want to look at some hormones because some people at 60 have perfect hormones. At 25, there's a lot that don't have perfect hormones. Okay. So for a real comprehensive blood test, it's about $250. And most of the time, your insurance pays for all of it. So this is ridiculous. This is so amazing to find out. And then you've got to find somebody who can partner with you to say, okay, this is not right. We got to go look. We need to go figure out why this isn't okay. There are more sophisticated testing that I do. Some of the blood tests, if you want to do a liquid biopsy for circulating tumor cells, early detection in conventional, there's some tests that are available now. They're not accurate. I've compared them to what I've been doing for years. Okay. But at least trying to get there. Okay. And when I say conventional, the big, huge laboratories like Gallery and circulating tumor cell, the Grail test, but they're just not accurate because I've compared them to what I'm utilizing in my parent algorithm that we use here in the clinic. And so, but at least, a liquid biopsy is about $800. Well, spending that $800 will save you lots of money in the long run, lots of suffering. Because I tell people, when a person is very sick today, you affect yourself, you affect your family, you affect your employment, and you affect your community. So here we go. We need to live off our community. So we're breaking down our community when each individual doesn't take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's such a ripple impact.
Yes, there's a real ripple impact. So if you don't have your health, literally, if you don't have your health, there goes your existence. So if people truly, it's like when you break your leg, you're like, oh my God, now I realize how important my leg is, right? So we don't realize what we don't have until we don't have it. So we've got to esteem. Well, first of all, we've got to change the value system in our culture, which is United States of America, that health has to be our number one thing, and not health that we can just walk into the office. No, health is like living this optimal life that you sleep great, you feel great, you just have lots of energy and you have vitality. That is health, okay? And health, even by the World Health Organization standards, is a social, physical, emotional well-being. So it's all of those things. So, but that's not what's happening. I know I see patients from everywhere. And I had a patient yesterday diagnosed with CLL, seeing a multitude of doctors, actually referred by a functional medicine doctor who doesn't do cancer. And he goes, oh my God, none of my doctors have even gone to any depth that you've gone to. In one visit, he had us follow up the second visit yesterday.
That's coming from functional even. Can you explain someone diagnosed with cancer, the difference between conventional and what we want functional or this root cause medicine movement to look like? How does conventional treat compared to how you might look at a patient who has already been diagnosed?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So first of all, the patient goes to the doctor and something's wrong on their blood test or whatever, a lump or bump or something. So they go to their primary care, sends them to oncologist. Oncologist says, okay, you have chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Okay, I'm going to monitor you just to see how you do. but here's the treatment. Here's the chemo that works. Here's the radiation that works. Let's just say, here's the surgery work. So conventionally, a surgery, chemo, radiation, depending obviously on the label. Okay, so that's number one. So they just attack the cancer. Okay, they don't try to understand what was the environment or the terrain or the landscape of the person that the cancer came in. Because one cancer cell to tumor diagnosis is about 9 to 10 years.
Wow.
So that means we had 9 years of opportunity to prevent this diagnosis.
Which is why you are so big on prevention.
Yeah, I am so big because it's like, come on, this is simple. This is easy. I know because I'm doing it. There's patients that are unfortunately interested and they never have anything on their scan. Okay. I optimize all their blood work and their nutrition and the whole thing. And they never have cancer and they see me once a year, but they have on liquid biopsy circulating tumor cells or some of the other markers that I use. They're doing fine. They're living in their life. They don't have any interruption. They're not suffering. And they are loving their life because, and they're so appreciative and thankful because it's like, wait, I could have been there,
And you realize how much control you actually have when you know what to do and you have someone to walk beside you and help you with these things. It doesn't always come intuitively. I mean, my heart just goes out to people who are living with the diagnosis and they're like, I could prevent it. But I could have prevented it. But that gets me to something else I had heard you say, that if you change the terrain of your body, then you have to do that and have it align with chemotherapy. Because if you just do chemotherapy, but you don't change the terrain, and I remember you saying,
comes right back, right?
Yeah, because cancer just thrives off sugar. You gave 3 things. It was sugar, acid, and
low oxygen.
Low oxygen. And
right.
So if you keep those 3, if you don't change anything, but you just remove the cancer, your body is going to repeat.
And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. And Nixon declared war on cancer 50 years ago and every other president subsequently. And has cancer gotten better or worse? Worse. Okay. So we've got to change the way we care for patients. And I prepare my patients even for a biopsy. Okay. Because a biopsy, is an injurious immunosuppressive process. So even before a patient has anything done, I prepare them for the biopsy, the surgery. I do all the collateral support if they do conventional chemotherapy and or radiation. Even for scans, I prepare the patient.
What's preparation look like?
Okay. So for example, let's pretend a woman has a breast lump. Okay. So first of all, I'll make sure all of their blood is perfect. Get their landscape as good as possible. I will put them on supplements that prevent metastasis, help their immune system, do an emotional work that everything's going to work out great. It's going to work out all for their own good. I check the circulating tumor cells, work on those right away. So that's what I do usually before, and they follow it after their biopsy, usually for 4 weeks. Okay. Usually I'll do an IV vitamin C, maybe some oxygen therapies, hyperbaric or ozone or whatever, because we know we already have. I do a blood test that checks for their oxygen status of their cells. And so I will do that. But, I really prepare them mentally and physically. Because it's very scary to go in for a procedure, let's face it. And surgery is very injurious immunosuppressive and takes a year or more to get over a surgery. So we aren't talking about how to protect the immune system when a patient undergoes surgery. And then look at all the medicines they're taking, the antibiotics they're taking. I mean, everything. They're taking a lot of medicines and then when you do chemotherapy is destructive to all body systems. So we've got to be taking care of our patients while they're going through this journey. And medicine has lost that art of care of the patient along every single part of the process.
So if we're out of the prevention zone, someone already has their stage 2, 3, 4 cancer diagnosis, do you often partner with conventional medicine?
Of course, I always tell the patient, I'm going to partner with you, whatever what is going on. I'm going to. Now, the doctors, the conventional doctors, don't know about integrative functional medicine. So they might they don't know. So, I tell people, I can't have an opinion on something I don't know.
Yeah.
So doctors exert their opinion on something they don't know, whether it's IV vitamin C or mistletoe or heat therapy or whatever, right? And the other big thing is antioxidants and so forth. So, but I tell the patient, look, I always give them substantial information so they understand. Okay. And I try to collaborate and cooperate with the oncologist, if you know what I'm saying, because here we are, we should all be working together for the optimal care for each patient.
I think sometimes some listeners might relate to this. It's like, no, this is a cancer diagnosis. This is a big diagnosis. I can't just cure it with green juice.
No, I agree with that.
Sometimes there is this opinion that if you go this whole body functional route, that you're just drinking a bunch of green juice and taking some supplements and wishing away some heavy diagnosis. It's not. And that's why I wanted to point out that you can partner. Oftentimes you do partner with conventional medicine. And then there is stuff I imagine you handle in-house and feel like there's plenty of tools to support that route as well.
Right. Yeah, you should be partnering with all the doctors. Everybody can provide great insight to that patient's outcome, whether it's the surgeon, the radiologist, the oncologist. So I always tell all the patients, your job is to get educated. This is your system. You're the one that's going to make the ultimate decision on what your plan is going to be. So I always want to include all the doctors, and let's make sure that we're all making the best informed, educated decision for this patient.
We talk about that a ton on the show. It's like advocate for yourself. You be your best advocate. You do your research, right? And don't just trust the first line on Google. Dig into PubMed, dig into what feels intuitively right for you. How do you get that methodology of your health? How do you get that discipline every single day? And sometimes that is by researching your own condition, working with multiple doctors, but challenging and partnering in some instances because we know ourselves best.
Right, exactly. And so most of the time in this day and time, the doctors are receptive much more, than like say 5 years ago. And then some of the patients just choose to take the information and they will tell me, you know what, Dr. King, this is what I feel best with to do X, Y, Z. And I will partner them because, there's something called the placebo and the nocebo. So if you think this system is going to work for you, meaning whatever it is, surgery, chemo, whatever, then I will partner with the patient and say, okay, if you're going to do that, this is how we're going to protect you. So that's what we should be doing. All right.
And then you have your tools of protection, right? Hyperbaric oxygen, ozone, UBI. You have these tools that you can help
support the patient. Exactly. So we have all these things that change the unwell garden of the body that the cancer came in, and to support them if they're going to have any kind of surgery, chemo, or radiation. And we have all different kinds of tools in the clinic to help the patient, because some of these patients come in stage, and we want their system to be just as good as possible. I mean, sometimes, they've already exhausted all conventional methodologies. Okay. So let's just try to do the best to get in checkmate with the cancer. And you can live with cancer. A lot of people don't understand that. You can live an optimal existence with cancer by doing, all the supportive things that functional integrative medicine knows about.
You're right. That would not be something most people would think through.
Right. No, I have many a patient who they're, 14 years out and they still have cancer, but because their mind is so strong and because their attention to their human body with coffee enemas, the right supplements, the right lymphatic drainage, whatever it is, they are living in checkmate with the cancer, which is beautiful. Okay. This is just beautiful. So
what I want from you is for you to come back on this show and talk about how to live a successful day-to-day life that leads to health. That I think would be a great episode. But to wrap this up, just thank you for your expertise and your insight on this. It's interesting.
Well, great. No, I love what I get to do every day. And I just want people to know, just like I think you do, you just want everyone to know that there are lots of options and invincible solutions out there.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I just want everyone to know that they are the walking miracle you talked about. I think we're just a gift and we are amazing and our bodies know how to heal. It's not a perfect, right? Suffering still occurs and it's not a perfect outcome every single time, but we can live with this diagnosis in a different way than I think conventional medicine tells us.
That's right.
So thank you for your insight. Let's end on 3 things that anybody can walk away with today, this minute, and implement into their lives for better health.
Well, I think the most important thing before you get out of bed in the morning, you've got to set your mind into a positive mental attitude, PMA. And I do that with gratitude. Thinking, the first thing I say is thank you, God, for perfect healing, perfect harmony, perfect homeostasis, and perfect happiness in my body from head to toe. And then I go on from there, all the things that I'm grateful for. So that already sets my day every day for how I'm going to be, because you got to arm yourself. Okay. And your mind talks to your body every day, all day long. So if this is good, if the mind is good, then the messages and the molecules that you're sending to your cells is going to be very good. So then you've got to live a life. I always tell people your day starts when you go to sleep. So if you don't sleep well, which is about 8 hours, then the next 12 hours are not going to be good, because sleep is your restoration, rejuvenation, repair time. And so you've got to create this perfect sleep sanctuary. Then whatever you eat, it needs to be giving the good information to your body. So like Oreo cookies is not going to be good information, all right? But nutrient dense food. So everyone needs to think, I'm not saying perfection. We're not talking about perfection. It's never a good goal, but nutrient dense, beautiful food that's going to nourish and strengthen your body.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on. We will chat again.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the FDA. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse nor accept responsibility for statements made by guests.